Hi, thanks for giving us some time this afternoon, Gemma. I'm really pleased that you've been able to join us and talk to us a little bit about what you've been getting up to. So if you don't mind, could you just start by telling us a little bit about your business and what your role is?
So we run an online radio station that also uses the tool of radio to engage with young unemployed adults from Greater Manchester, and we support them into work. So we're a community interest company, and within that business I'm one of the founders and directors of Reform Radio alongside Sam and Rach, and we set it up about 7 years ago from a basement in Chorlton.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So tell me a little bit about over the last couple of months, when lockdown or whatever it is we're going to call it, when this period, the outbreak of the coronavirus started, then how do you think that's impacted your market space?
It's quite we took a week to take a breath, and actually then what started to happen, because we work with young people in crisis anyway, we kind of had two sides of the coin. So as we are now working with many more isolated young people who have now been made unemployed, who were not necessarily unemployed at the, beforehand. So there's kind of been an influx in unemployment in young people and everybody. So more crisis funds were released as a result of that. So obviously in terms of our resources have been slightly stretched in the fact that we've been having to hammer those funding bids in. And make sure that the ideas are quality, and we've kind of had to reach out to all of our young people and work out what their kind of digital barriers are and situation is to joining into those kind of bids that we're writing so that they're appropriate. So that's kind of increased our market area in that side. Then on the other flip side, we work with loads of artists who run like the station. They deliver loads of events for us. They do nights for us. And so for them, it was a bit of a kind of looking for some of these funds to also prop up that kind of freelance type of market space as well. And finding ways where some of the regular things we did, like small events and things where obviously people come together in quite small spaces, are done more online, and kind of thinking creatively about still delivering that and getting those freelancers paid in some way. Yeah.
So clearly, as a company that always gets involved in events, etc., you've had to make changes. This was there was no grey area here. So tell me a little bit about some of the adjustments you made. Then, how did you manage to do that so quickly?
I think the most important thing was we took a week away from any decision making. We kind of just did things like called young people, spoke to freelancers, spoke to each other, kind of took the temperature really of where everything was going. And then we started to think about, okay, what are the new platforms? What are the safeguarding issues with these platforms? How can we deliver some of these workshops? Do young people who are unemployed have laptops, have Wi-Fi, have all of these things? Now, obviously, not a lot of them do. Some of them have smartphones. So it was kind of a bit of a data gathering activity for the first couple of weeks. How many people have been laid off, furloughed, how many mental health had decreased in that time, what kind of domestic situations would become more kind of volatile, or young people have become more in crisis, as well as then looking at the health risks. And for them it was a case of looking at what we already had programmed for like the next 6 months and talking to funders and keeping that dialogue open and transparent and creating projects but putting them online. Now, where we still have issues is with young isolated people with things like they don't want to go on a video, they don't want to go online and things like that. So we really scratched our head around that side of it, and we worked with other people to kind of buy data, send laptops and phones and close those things where we can, do training before we did the workshops and stuff. But another thing we discovered, which everyone was turning to video calls straight away, was that if you Skype people from you can ring landlines and mobile phone numbers without them ever sharing each other's numbers. So we could ring up to like a group of people and potentially run a creative writing workshop over the phone. And where that worked really well was when we had very young isolated people who were not necessarily gaining any more skills to add to their CV. They were lowering in confidence. They were kind of not doing anything, which therefore then becomes a mental health issue eventually. And so we had a group of older people that we worked with on a project, and another side to kind of my life is to run another company called Sonder, and they're isolated older people, and we developed something called Buddy Line. So the young people ring the older people once a week, and they have conversations. But then we developed a way to record the conversations by having a producer sit in every call, and they record it, and we put it out on Sonder as radio, so you hear these lovely conversations going out. And I think it just sparked a lot of creativity and a lot of kind of what needed to happen. And we developed a 3 set of values that we decided that our normal values for Reform Radio are creativity, collaboration and community, and they still stand, obviously. But we needed something to kind of tap into, I suppose, what was really happening now, and as a team, to know when we're making decisions where we're best to spread those resources at the moment and our time. And so we looked at what that needed to be. So the first one was to ensure the safety and well-being of our Reform staff and wider community, obviously. The second was to find freelancer opportunities and volunteer opportunities to get as many freelancers paid as possible. So to create opportunities for freelancers, maybe that we're going to do an event, to maybe run a workshop instead, get paid and deliver that for some of the projects. And then the third value that we decided was to still keep creating joyful content at the time when people need it the most, to go out into people's homes. And so that was a side where we have a lot of support from Uber, and they taxi around a lot of our laptops and equipment and stuff, and we're doing so many live shows from homes and from the DJs' homes and things like that, and we're sending like webcams and things.
So this is, Jemma, this is brilliant, because this is a time for some businesses it's been dealt with as almost crisis management, and in some cases very much that. And yet you guys, okay, you took the time to reflect, the time to think, which is what we'd see as planning. You've tapped into technology that already exists. The idea about the Skype calls, I had no idea that that's how it works, but straight away it removed one of the insecurities that was coming up as a blockage for you. And then you've gone as far as to extend your core values to encompass the time at the moment. And it's just a brilliant way, as you've described it there, it's a brilliant way as how to deal with adversity by looking back onto the things around you. And I know obviously the three of you have always worked really good as a core team together there. So I can picture in that week saying, this is not a time to panic. This is a time to get things in order. When we're ready, we'll then come back out. And it just sounds like a fantastic story. So bring us up to the current date then. What are your plans at the moment? Where, we're almost in a period where the country is looking to get back into normal, get whatever that might constitute. What does it mean for Reform and you guys?
So for us, again, we're taking some time this next week to consider what that looks like for us. So we're looking at policy changing, but we're also, most importantly, is thinking what's right for us and what's right for our community. So we're looking to schools for things like how they're dealing with the children going back. So even though we're working with big groups of adults, there'll be similar things such as, we use lots of different equipment all the time. So it might be that one person sets that up, for example, instead of everyone going and helping themselves and things like that. There might be a one-way system we introduce. We might have pens and pencils that people have their own instead of sharing. Just a variety of things, and they're kind of things that we're taking from schools already. We're looking to existing things like United We Stream. We're looking to existing things like United We Stream, who have already done loads of amazing events, and we're looking at how we could maybe do some social distancing events, some outdoor workshops, and thinking about also what learning we've actually taken from this period of time. So
right. Yeah, I was going to ask you that actually, Jemma. What are you going to take from this period then into the future? What are the key, there's probably loads, but what are the key things that you've learned so far as a company?
I think one of the key things is to, I think as an organisation who kind of specialise in pastoral support for young people, I think one of the key things for them is that we treat our staff, and that our culture of our organisation is very similar to how we would go about working with young people and the projects that we run. So we do kind of value the bit of time for our staff to work from home, and those kind of things are already things that are in place. We have a wellbeing manager for our staff, and we have things like that. So for us, I think where it will be most of a change is things like, we will probably start a blended approach going forward. So
Right.
instead of only having physical kind of contact, we think that's really important for human confidence, for human self-esteem, for human well-being, and that's not something we want to take away. But we also understand that things like the older people, you know, using telephones and basic technology, not always reaching for the most super duper exciting thing that's already there. I think one thing that we'll look at is simplicity, and I think there'll be some projects that we will always now do a version of that project online. And the reason being is because we do work club once a month, and we're doing once every bi-weekly at the moment, because obviously the nature of the amount of unemployed young people there are. And what we found is, one woman told us that she could attend now because she had a small child, she's a single mum, and that she couldn't attend the other ones before. Now, we didn't know that. And so I think for us, it's kind of making sure that we collect more data like that, saying to people, you know, why don't you come, and would you come, and being able to use that digital to do that now. Also, another community are being carers, people who maybe look after a parent or a grandparent or a brother or a sister, and their timetables never quite meet up because their caring duties are always different. So we might run a carers online project that's specifically online and people can tap into it. So I think just adjusting and applying some of that learning and thinking about a blended look into the future as opposed to one or the other.
See, I love this. Every time I speak with yourself or anybody from Reform, I always take something, and this idea of a blended approach is fantastic. We're not suddenly going to change track and become a different company and now everything's changed, but we're going to absorb some of the things that we've done. You've used the word simplicity, which of course is a fantastic way to go, because we tend to overcomplicate things, and now is a very good time when people are doing that. But this idea of a blended approach is brilliant. So let me just take that, and in a nutshell, Jemma, for anybody who's listening to this as we put this out through our own social media, if somebody else is looking to Reform and saying, look, there's an example which we can follow, what would be your one top tip or piece of advice for them, for their business, to how they could adjust and do and have the success that you guys have seen throughout this period?
Probably
that's a tough one, isn't it?
It is a tough one.
No more than 3 words, please.
Do what's right for you. I think that's 5.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't just you know, follow what's happening around at the moment. Obviously, keep to the safety of everything, but I think speak to your staff, involve everyone in that conversation, and get a good 360 view on things before you kind of go diving in, and just take a moment to reflect before heading straight back into the madness.
Into the madness. Brilliant. That's a great into the madness. We'll leave it there. I'll take those as your 3 words. But yeah, go back and be yourselves and do it your own way. And by going back and consulting your own core values, as you said earlier in the conversation, is just the way to do it, isn't it? That's brilliant. And nothing different from what I'd have expected from you guys at Reform. Jemma, thank you for your time this afternoon. Thank you very much. Just before you go, if somebody's hearing for the first time about Reform Radio, how can they find out more? Do you want to give the website, or perhaps your how you can be best contacted?
Yeah, so we're reformradio.co.uk, 24-hour radio station. All playbacks are on there as well if you miss anything. Instagram, Reform Radio, Facebook, Reform Radio, Twitter, Reform Radio NCR. Yeah, my name's Jemma. Always get in touch with us. All our emails are on the website.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jemma. That's been great. Thank you.
No worries. Take care. Thanks, Steve.